Hello, this is Dave, and this is a message again for the people of Stray Nation. Stray Nation are those believers in God, the followers of Jesus, who are 60 to 100 million strong in North America and the United States, who believe in God, follow Jesus, but you don't go to church. You're not involved with any recognized institution, and but you love Jesus, you believe in God, and but you don't love the church that much. And today, what I'm going to speak about is the supernatural. What I want to start off with are going to deal with some verses that have always remained a mystery to most, and never thought that there was an explanation for them, but there actually is. Let me start off with 1 Peter. 1 Peter 3:19. It says, and get context from 18. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the just for the unjust, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive by the Spirit, by whom also he went and preached to the spirits in prison, who formerly were disobedient, when once the divine long-suffering waited in the days of Noah while the ark was being prepared, in which a few, that is, 8 souls, were saved through water. And then 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 4, for God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell. And that word hell in 2 Peter 2:4 is the word Tartarus. Tartarus is a Greek word. And delivered them into the chains of darkness to be reserved for judgment. And then there's Genesis, famous passages, Genesis 1-4, actually through 5. Now it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. In verse 5, then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And let's take a look at Job. Job chapter 1, verse 6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And then Job chapter 2. And again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. And then finally, 1 Kings chapter 22. Now this verse is also repeated in 2 Chronicles 18. Then Micaiah said, therefore hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all the host of heaven standing by on his right hand and on his left. And the Lord said, who will persuade Ahab to go up, that he may fall at Ramoth Gilead? So one spoke in this manner, and another spoke in that manner. Then a spirit came forward and stood before the Lord and said, I will persuade him. The Lord said to him, in what way? So he said, I will go out and be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And the Lord said, you shall persuade him and also prevail. Go out and do so. Therefore, look, the Lord has put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these lying prophets of yours, and the Lord has declared disaster against you. Okay, so those are the texts. Now, I may not get to all of them. I'd like to. That might make it a little bit short, make it not short, too long. I like to keep these videos relatively short. Attention span matters. That's what drives the timing for my videos. And so let's start with basically the idea of the supernatural. There are a lot of people in the church who minimize the supernatural out of fear, basically. And you have to first start off with if there's fear about doing something, teaching something, believing something, and you have to question, well, where is that fear coming from? And I would suggest that fear typically comes from Satan. That's typically the way that goes. Fear of God isn't. People might try to mask that and say, well, it's the fear of God that, I don't believe actually what the Bible says. That doesn't make much sense. And specifically in reference to the scriptures that I just read, we've all read those scriptures in 1st and 2nd Peter about going and preaching to the spirits in prison. And what could that possibly mean? Most commentators, for one reason or another, just kind of like, oh my goodness, what are they talking about? They know exactly what it's talking about. They're just not going to talk about it because they have an aversion to the supernatural, believe it or not, despite the fact that as believers, followers of Jesus, we believe in the resurrection of the dead and the virgin birth of all things. Oh, for crying out loud. Talking about supernatural, how supernatural can you get? Virgin birth and rising from the dead. You don't get any more supernatural than that. Yet they would try to push this other stuff aside, and that just doesn't make any sense to me. And it did not make any sense to me until recently. I read bunch of books by a bunch of different people that I've already mentioned in the past. One is by a guy named Michael Heiser, Unseen Realm, and Reversing Herman. And there's another book I just read, Demons. All outstanding books. And then there's Jonathan Cahn's Return of the Gods. They're all outstanding books. And they do a very, very detailed and very thorough dealing of the supernatural, specifically within the context in regards of what I'm trying to get at here, and specifically in reference to these kinds of scriptures in the Bible. Now, when Peter talks about these imprisoned spirits in hell, what he's talking about is the word there is Tartarus. Tartarus, it's a Greek word. I read quite a bit of Greek and Roman mythologies, and Tartarus is the place where the Olympian gods were imprisoned. And after they were overthrown by the Olympians overthrew their fathers. And these are the new gods who overthrew, those that came before them, and they threw them into Tartarus. So here we have a Jewish guy talking about Greek mythology. That can't be. One of the things that we often ignore here in 2023, in the modern era, is that the writers of scripture, they lived in a different kind of world than we do. They didn't have Walmarts that they could go to. They didn't have cell phones. They didn't have the internet. They lived in a very, very different world. They lived in an animistic world. They lived in a world where everyone believed in the supernatural. And most of them were pagans. And that was the problem with the Jews in ancient Israel, was they too were pagans. They bowed the knee, literally and figuratively, to idols, because the spirits are real. And when you don't pay them proper homage, then it could be very troublesome for you. And that's why people worshipped idols, because there were spirits that were antagonistic, and that made life troublesome, for human beings. And so hold on a second. And so what did Peter mean? Bound in prison in hell. Well, obviously the reference here means that Peter, knows or knew about the stories, what we call the mythologies. These so-called mythologies was known to everyone. Everybody knew about Tartarus. Everyone knew about the ancient evil spirits that had plagued humans from antiquity, from creation. And they didn't have a problem with it. And they were troublesome. They were troublesome. But the glorious part is Jesus came to free us from the dominion and the domination and the influence of these ancient evil spirits. And as believers, we have authority in that. We have authority over these ancient evil powers. And that ultimately is the point. However, there is always the matter of believing properly and believing incorrectly. In Genesis, a common point of disagreement is Genesis 6, 1 through 5. The anti-supernaturalists among us look at that and say, well, the sons of God does not refer to angels. It refers to humans. And that is just absolute nonsense. Peter, when he talks about the spirits that were punished, he's making reference to that, to Genesis 6. The world of the Sumerian mythologies, the stories of Gilgamesh, and all those crazy, wild mythologies. Well, everybody knew about those things, and that's why they don't talk about it in the Bible. I mean, it was already out there. The people who wrote the scriptures, they were focused on the stuff that people did not know about, and they didn't know about the specifics about Jesus, why he came, what he did, and the kingdom of heaven, and that things were going to change. And no need to talk too much about that other stuff because everybody already knew about it. And it's no point in talking about it. And they knew that they were writing for people in the future. And so we make the mistake in thinking that, well, they live in a non-supernatural world like we do. Our world is non-supernatural only because we think it's non-supernatural. But we live in the same world. The world that we live in is no different. Those ancient evil spirits that have haunted humanity from the Garden of Eden until now, they're still around. They're still around. And then someone might argue, well, Jesus took care of that for those of us who believe. That's true. They have been tamed. And but nonetheless, many of us are still plagued by spiritual matters. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But what I want to do is to lay the groundwork for the supernatural, let's say, aspect of the world that we live in. And again, as I said, the world that we live in today really is no different than the world that the first believers lived in and the ancient Israelites lived in. It's just covered up. I mean, we all know about the globalists and their agenda, Klaus Schwab and his people, and their apparently crazy claims and all the crazy stuff that's going on, and people in pop culture, influencers doing demonic, satanic kinds of rituals on TV, on stage. And it's just all this stuff is coming out of the woodwork. Why do you think that is? Because that's the kind of world, that's the kind of reality that we live in. That is the nature of reality. It's spiritual. You know, the idea that we live in a rational world, that, that's the West. We have machines, we have stuff, and we try to hide behind the stuff. But the demons and the evil spirits, they don't care about the stuff. It don't make any difference to them. They use it to their advantage. And there's a lot. There's a lot. And the reason I'm going through this is because if you were to read the books that I just mentioned in the beginning of this cast, um, you wouldn't need to listen to me. But most of you will not read those books for whatever reason. So I feel obligated to address some of the core issues. And the core issue is that we live in a supernatural world. That is the world that is fundamentally supernatural. You know, the trappings of rationality, they're all, the trappings are just lies. They're just coverings. They're just ideas that we try to hide behind to, let's say, hide and cover up the harsh realities of what's going on in the spiritual realms. We're living in a day that's just filled with lies and deceptions, and we need to be able to see through that. And in order to do that, we have to have an accurate view of what the scriptures are telling us. And the kind of world that they portray is not a rational world. It's not a world that's explained by and dealt with and commandeered by rationality. That's not the way the world is. And all the spirits are coming out of the closet. They're all coming out of the box now. They're all coming out of hiding. And we're heading into a world where things are changing. And hopefully the information that I pass on to you will help you to stand strong. You can't stand strong if you're believing a lie. The only way to battle the lie or to lies and fiction is with truth. And we'll finish up next time around. Until then.